This meeting to order. We'll start with do I have to do this? We'll call the meeting to order. Let's stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, our first task for tonight will be to approve the Budget Committee minutes from May 24th, 2023.
Madam Chair, I would move approval of the Budget Committee minutes from May 24, 2023 meeting as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. Okay, so at this time, we're going to open the meeting up for public comments. Each speaker who has signed up, I'll recognize them, and then they'll have 3 minutes to speak. Comments or questions will relate to the proposed budget appropriations. Comments and questions will be responded to by Superintendent Gardner and by Business Director Jane Nofziger. And should the members of the Budget Committee desire further clarification. So if we have questions or want further clarifications, we'll direct them to the Superintendent and the Business Director. Is there anything that, Superintendent, that you'd like to add?
I just want to comment that I appreciate those people who have returned tonight to make those comments, and I think that's important. We look forward to hearing them, and we'll try to answer everything that we can. If I can speak more broadly, I'm happy to do that as well.
All right, so I will open it up to public comment. The first person we have on the list is Susan Leonard.
Good evening. Is that coming through the mic? Okay, great. I know that there's still uncertainty in the budget, despite the, all of the work that all of you have done on it. Partly because we have still ongoing and in the future bargaining with staff, and also because we know that Republicans, some of them have walked out of the Oregon Senate, and so there can't be any movement right now on lots of bills, in particular the one that would grant money to education. So I realize that makes it difficult to make a lot of final decisions. I know that Director Nyquist at the last meeting talked about he would like to have better wages paid to everyone in our district. I think maybe you were talking about instructors, but I will just broaden it to say it would be nice if we could pay better wages. I know after talking to some of the classified staff that some of them are not being paid a living wage. I understand there are classified staff who live in their cars because they are not able to afford a home. And to me, that does not seem right. Speaking to them, many of them, a couple of them that I talked to said they know they could probably make more money working in a different environment, but they like working with students. They like working in schools. They feel like it's important to be part of education. So I think that's something that's a group we should prioritize. I would love for teachers to be paid more too. My daughter and my daughter-in-law are both teachers, not in this district, and I don't know how their pay compares, but I know that they're able to manage. They make a living wage, but I don't feel like that is really happening with our classified staff. So I'm wondering, and I know it's a proposed budget, but how do we budget pay for employees when we have so many unknowns right now? And how much can you promise that we will try to do something better if the money becomes available?
Thank you.
I'll speak to that.
Yep.
Thank you, Susan, for those comments. And I would not disagree with what has been said by the classified, and we see that as well. We see that our classified We have a 7-step scale, but it takes 15 years to top out. We saw that at the top of the scale, we were about 9% below the comparison with other school districts. And so we have placed that as a priority. Now, instead of 15 years to get to the top of the scale, you'll be able to get there in 7 years. And we have, actually, you can't get to the top. We added 2 steps, or 1 step. We added a step, and I think the next year we will add yet another step, which will move that top end to a more competitive position with other districts. The one place where we are not competitive is when we compare to Target Distribution Center or even McDonald's, because they do not carry the 30%. It's about 30% above our payroll that we pay for PERS. And so we carry costs that don't go direct, they get a pension out of it, but we do carry that cost over and above that. How do we plan this? It's a good question. We do know this, that the governor has established this as a priority, that both the president of the Senate and the Speaker of the House have stated that this is their priority and that they want to move that. And we do have the Republicans, even though they are not attending for the passage of all bills, they are on record as saying they will move the funding when the last day of the session arrives. So we have been told by our lobbyists in COSA, the Confederation of Oregon School Administrators, that that 10-2 number would be a basis for judgment and for our planning. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
follow-up question. So
Yes.
Andy, Superintendent, if I could ask, the step changes you just mentioned, which I think are fantastic, are those already reflected in next year's budget?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. Anyone else for questions? Go ahead. Dana and then Ben.
With those additional steps, you said it took 15 years to get to the top. Does this extend that, or?
No, what happened is we had, in your first 5 years, you would go step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, and those steps would be moved by a cost of living adjustment, so you could get a step and the cost of living, right? But when you got to step 6, it was called L1, and you didn't get to move beyond that until you got to your 9th year to go to L2, which was the 7th step. And once you got to your 9th year and made that move, you stayed there, period. And it was low comparative to other districts' top scale. Some districts are going to be a little longer to get there. Some might have 12 steps or whatever, but you waited a long time to get to not a very good place, right? And so we're working to correct that over time.
Ben?
And just to ask, the step that was added, it's added at the very end, so like a new top tier, is that?
Yes.
I'm understanding right? All right, thanks.
I have one if I may.
Okay.
Can staff that transfers in that has a skill set that they've been working in maybe a different district, do they have to come in at 1 or can they come in at a level above?
We grant experience that is job
Okay,
related.
thank you.
Yeah, and we, beginning this year, we give all steps to teachers. We did have an 11-year limit, so you would come in at step 11 if you're at 15 in another district.
Okay.
And that has been lifted. We're trying to be, like, we can't put a bunch of hurdles in front of people because we're in a different world.
Yep, thank you.
It's currently for classified limited to the first 2 steps, and we're in negotiation about how to remove that so we can give more years' experience for classified. That's on the table.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions about this topic? All right. Okay. We will move on then to Beth Barkston.
My 2 questions have to do with the line items that we saw for different items in the last meeting. And I'd like to know, I couldn't ask about the line items because that's my question. What are they? Okay, I want to know, when the district buys out someone's contract, where does that money come from? Which of these is it? And secondly, when the school board decides to hire an independent contractor like McPherson and whatever they were for the national search for a superintendent, where does that money come from? Because buying out Melissa Goff's contract was $300,000, give or take. The search thing was $75,000. We're talking about approaching $500,000. And I would like to know how that money is coded in this document.
So can I ask a clarifying question, Beth? Those buyouts would not be in this year's budget.
They were, I'm sorry, of all nights, I forgot to put my hearing aids in. I was getting ready and I laid them down on my dresser and I forgot to put them back in. So you're going to have to shout at me or at least let me stand close to you. Ever so
Okay.
sorry.
So we don't have those similar line items. I do not know what was done during that year where they would have been expended out of. But we do not carry money for McPherson and Jacobson or any such contractor doing that every year, nor do we have a lineup in the budget that would buy out a contract. That
Well,
we have
how-
not budgeted for that.
So when the board decides to spend money, they just presume that it will be there, even though there's no specific category that they're dealing with. Is that right? And how about the board members who were there this first year? Where did the money come from? You must know, you were there.
I wasn't there, but my guess could be that maybe a contingency was moved to pay for the necessary expenses.
Okay, where would that appear in here, Jane?
A contingency is like a 0710 object, a 0810 object, excuse me.
Well, I'm sure you knew I was going to ask this question because I had emailed them to you before the last meeting. So I'm going to presume that you must have someplace you can kind of point me to in this document.
Page 19 is the district's contingency.
Okay, and the line that we're talking about here under other objects. So my 3 minutes are over.
Yes. But can we answer her question though? Well, do you need more clarification on that? So they're telling you it comes from the contingency.
I know, but I'm asking which line on page 19 it's on. Am I looking at if there's contingency and unappropriated balance? Yeah. So they can spend,
There's nothing in the actuals from that year, so it would have been pulled into something else?
Correct. I don't even know that happened. I'm just saying that would
I know,
be a
I
way.
understand that, Jane, but I'm just saying, when the board decides to spend money, they can just spend, it's an open-ended thing, is that right?
I'm just saying to you, they still have to stay within the legal appropriation authority provided by the budget.
So would that be this lines, contingency and the contingency line? Do they have to stay within that?
That's an option.
I wish my checkbook worked that way. Okay.
Dana, do you have a question?
Just because I did see some numbers for this year under contingency. How much did we budget for contingencies? Just
It's only $2,750,000 contingency. They can shoot through that.
So the contingency and the plan reserve both provide for the district's projected ending fund balance. So they are budgeted this year for us to end at 12.5 million. It's not our plan to utilize those funds. If we receive additional students, where we receive additional revenue, the contingency would provide expenditure authority for additional teachers and classified.
Any other questions? All right, then we will move on. The last person for public comment, Braden. Braden, I cannot read your last name, but go ahead and tell us who you are. Thank you.
Hello, I am Braden Kalida. I am here to speak on behalf of Swarm, the robotics team. We request funding for our team to set up both more in our own program and to set up programs for our elementary schools and middle schools. We hope to be able to do so. By doing this, we can allow access to STEAM for elementary and middle school students without much barriers and raise interest for STEAM, hopefully supporting the students in ways to get them more interested in the sciences and to also give them the benefits of learning the how to do stimulated things such as wiring, soldering, and building CAD, et cetera, et cetera.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Do we have a response?
Yeah, I have a question for you. You
Yes.
guys had submitted to the last board meeting a written proposal that did not look the same as you are presenting tonight. Is that still a portion of a request? I think you guys had discussed travel and something else in that.
I do not know off the top of my head. I do know that we have specific details in a comment that was submitted by another student or representative at some other point in time.
So we would have to look at that, members, to determine where, many times clubs require either a parent who is willing to come or a staff member who has some aptitude in this area and interest. And so we would not be opposed to that and what that would look like. We would have to spend some time, and we're happy to listen to those ideas.
All right.
Thank you very much.
I have a question. So you refer to Swarm and then you refer to STEAM. What's STEAM?
STEAM is I believe it's science, technology, engineering, arts, and mechanics, I want to say, right? Mathematics.
Okay. And how many students in total participate in Swarm and STEAM?
In Swarm, we have, I'd say, roughly 30 to 60 students who participate on a regular basis.
Director Nyquist, STEAM is more a it's a track of learning. So the science, technology, arts, they all fall under the title of STEAM as a academic process. So it's more what the schools are doing to implement those programs in their schools.
Versus just the club. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Questions? Dana?
Go.
Or Chris? Chris, then Dana.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, what is currently, or is there any budget now for specifically the robotics programs at the elementary, middle, and high school levels?
We offer clubs through the co-curricular funds. I think there was, I can't remember the exact amount. Is it 200,000 total?
Okay.
Which we pay stipends or an hourly amount to the person who would run the club.
Okay.
Generally, though, clubs travel through their own fundraising.
Okay. Yeah, and full disclosure, my son did this at the elementary level, and that was my recollection, is we had a facilitator, but most of the funds for travel and tournaments were fundraised for. I wasn't sure, and not seeing what their proposal was, it sounds like they're asking for an additional for some of those travel funds specifically, as opposed to the fundraising model that is
Yeah.
currently being used? Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Dana?
I think I've heard about your club from someone I work with, but are you between the two high schools? Okay, so both West and South together. And is there any activity with middle schools and elementary right now?
I do not believe we currently have any set up, and we plan to use some of the funds if we supposedly do end up getting some to support and set up programs for elementary and middle schools.
Okay. We provide avenues for teachers to get grants for things like this? Yes or no? I'm thinking
I don't
about
think we're
Lego
opposed to that.
robotics. type-
Mrs. Knopfseger and I did discuss how we might be able to facilitate helping different groups to access grants. A lot of times, they do not come in the form of giving you money to travel, but they do offer like in-kind or money, which could buy some of the stuff that a given club might work with.
So I have a question. I guess for you, Superintendent Gardner, I guess for myself and the rest of the committee as well. I would say that the future is robotics, but it's not. It's here, it's right now, right? And so anything we can do to be as welcoming and development of skills, especially in a fun kind of way, is really important. It's also great that you showed up twice in a row. You're persistent. We admire you for that. How do we do this? If we were going to do this, how would we do it in a way that we don't set up this cascading event of 10 or 20 or 30 groups that would be in line for the same thing? And how do we put a box around this?
Well, I think there's still going to have to be a natural reliance on the club to engage in fundraising, whether it be through grants. But if we actually have access to state grants or something that we could help to point people towards, I think that would be a way to do it. Not every club in the district is going to naturally have a sponsoring fund by nature. And so, but I don't think we can just immediately just enter in with 40 or 50 clubs here. I don't think we can enter into, a fund for one and not others.
But we're the budget committee. We've got millions in contingency. We can't just spend that money?
Okay, so we'll just move on. No need to go low, we can go high.
Well, they're a good cause.
I have a question or
Yes,
comment, if
go
I may.
ahead.
More for the student. If listening to you talk about the club, to me, it feels like kind of parlays into a mechatronics career. All the industry in our area is really struggling to hire controls engineers, to hire people for mechatronics. You might consider, and perhaps you've done this already, but going out to some of these businesses and trying to get some sponsorship also. I think it's a pool that a lot of the industry partners in the area recognize needs to be filled. I can tell you, at Intech, it's a spot that we're continually trying to recruit to fill. So I think that you might have an opportunity there to get some funding outside of the district. So food for thought.
That happens too.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right.
I have
Yes,
a
go ahead,
question.
Ben.
So we have already approved the budget from the budget committee standpoint, but the school board itself does a final approval later. Will whatever was presented tonight that we haven't seen, will that go before the school board for consideration at that point for budgeting?
Yeah, and jump in, Jane, if you're uncomfortable. So you're talking about the things that we said would go at 10-2, 10-1?
No, I'm sorry, specific to this discussion regarding swarm and the broader club discussion that we brought up.
That would go to the school board for consideration from tonight.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, any other questions from the committee? Yes,
I
Chris?
have one not related to the last presenter. So
Okay.
If we're ready
Something
to move on
new?
to a different topic.
Yes, are we good with the swarm discussion? All right, so there will be follow-up, right? Is what we're saying? Okay, all right, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, actually, it was a clarification. At the end of the presentation from last meeting, there was a couple of notes, and my notes are not great, so I apologize that I can't repeat them verbatim, but there was two different things around some additional, I think, SIA funds and something else, where there was discussion about a needed motion to reflect those funds, and I don't think that motion got made, although there was a flurry of motions at the end. So I'm not sure if those things still need to be addressed by the committee, if that's going to go to the full school board, or what those two specific measures or proposals needed to be.
They will go to the board as part of the adoption.
And can you remind me what those two were? Because I would really like to know what notes said, and I can't read them.
Related to a transfer, 280,000 that currently is from SIA that we are moving into it as an expense in the general fund.
Thank you,
The
Jen.
other one was a debt service fund.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Is there anyone here that didn't get to sign up that wants to make a comment?
Madam Chair, I move we adjourn.
Second?
One more thing.
Okay, you have another question? Okay.
Yeah, last time we talked about treating this budget approval process as a checkpoint. And in my world, that means that we have an idea of when is the next check-in and checkpoint, what is going to be done in that time frame, what information needs to be gathered, or what do we need to understand. And also, what was really important to me was to hear from the public and how we may feed that into the next cycle or the next checkpoint.
So can I ask for a little specificity there? Are you talking about by the time we get to next year's budget, and are we on track with our ending fund balance without having to cut? Or are you talking about over the next 2 or 3 weeks, depending on what the legislature does?
I don't have a specific date in mind. We just said, treat this as a checkpoint. So to you, what is our next checkpoint then? Because to me, that doesn't mean that we finished the process.
Yeah, I think that this is, so I'm talking more long-term. We now have 2 years of less than desirable, less than what we have been used to. And so I would say that if you guys are all ready to re-up for next year, hopefully as we come back next year, you would see that we have performed better against the proposed budget, that there is the projected ending fund balance for next year plus some, rather than just barely holding even or dropping, so that we have controlled our expenditures, and that we would be on track to bargain with certified and make sure they are competitive as well against the standards that we have analyzed at that time, and move forward into the second of the 2 years of this biennium. That's what, in the long run, I would say is what we are shooting to do.
Chris, then Roger.
I think also, Dana, that one of the things I might have heard you say, but wasn't, is the 12th is the date that the school board has to adopt the budget. So I'm not sure if that was going to be part of your question too. And Superintendent Gardner gave a little bit longer time frame. The other sort of general comment I'll make is that I've been on this committee for a very long time, and I think, Heather, you've heard me say multiple times, it'd be great if we had more public input. I think we've had more public input in the last 2 meetings than I've had in the entire 10 years I've been on this committee. So we got our wish. I actually want to just keep this going because honestly, this makes the process better.
Well,
So might I suggest, Mr. Superintendent, that if things happen and as things happen that would not be consistent with what we projected here in this budget, that we let the budget committee members know that. And so you're not coming back here a year from now and the actual events barely resemble what we approved in a budget. I don't anticipate that happening, but I think we need to be conscious of things that may change and reaching out to the members of this committee and updating them.
The only concern I have, Director Nyquist, is that there's a bunch of people here that have termed out. We got to talk them into reapplying.
Okay.
And we typically do that in November. Okay.
okay, last thing, I think. No, and I appreciate what you said. I also live in the corporate world, right? A lot of jargon, a lot of different things. But I want to make sure that when we come around to next year, right, we have tools, communication, things in process that, so we don't end up where we were last week. Also, I completely understand why we pushed off some of the budget meetings, but I would like a schedule. What are the implications of if we don't meet, the first week that we said we're gonna meet? What are the implications if we don't get public comment in time and we don't approve in 2 meetings, right? Like a better understanding of the whole thing so that we're all on the same page.
I think your point's well taken. I think we both came from a district where we did not begin the process until after Memorial Day because, and very seldom did we have true information even then because the legislature, particularly in the biennial full session, sometimes can take their time arriving at a funding number. So to Susan's point, you're very often just relying on, okay, this looks like a number we can count on, right? And so, but in terms of the way that the board meetings are set up and stuff, we will definitely look at that again. And certainly, I just really appreciate the way tonight has gone. And I think that that's something we can look to do in the future.
Susan, go ahead and you'll have 3 minutes.
I'll make it quicker than that. Thank you for allowing public comment tonight and for making it clear, because it was not clear the way this meeting was advertised originally, this meeting on the 31st. It didn't say anything about public comment. It said only the meeting would only be if needed, which I understand because it depended on how far you got with the budget process. But I would like it if you would acknowledge that at the meeting on the 24th, the meeting notice did say the Budget Committee will receives, with an S, public input. It didn't say received as things had to be emailed in advance. It said the meeting receives public input. And then we all know what happened. I think there was a lot of unnecessary drama. And so I think you should just be more careful about the wording and more straightforward about public comment being welcomed. And again, I'm glad we had that opportunity tonight.
So I'll speak. I want to apologize to Ms. Carmichael, the board chair, for the lack of specificity in that comment. And I believe that we have a very complex community, but the people that sit here, the 2 men that will join us, have an obligation to think about all the kids and this entire community. And certainly that could have been done better, and we will definitely be reviewing this to be really clear about how that would occur.
And I just want to say I don't blame Chair Carmichael one bit for this because I understand she was elected chair at the first meeting. It didn't have anything to do with the way the meetings were noticed or setting the agenda.
Yeah.
I would agree.
I think we do need to acknowledge, because I went home and looked at the website and looked at the notices, and they said that meeting would entertain public comment, and then it wasn't on the agenda, which is how I missed it happening. And so I think it is fair and right that we do acknowledge that was a mistake that was made, and that is part of righting that wrong, was to have the meeting tonight and to welcome public comment.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming back.
All right, then I will close the public comment. Thank you all for coming. Can I have a motion to
Adjourn?
adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.